Okay, everyone, we're going to start on time. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. All right, we're going to start the November 18th, 2024 committee meeting of the Fairfield RTM. Let's all stand for the pledge. First, we're going to start out with what is agenda item 6, an appointment of George Blees to the Employee Retirement Board. You can find this in your backup on page 1 to 5 of our backup. Is Mr. Blees here? Great. You can come on up and just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to serve. Yep, right there. There's a microphone. You do have to push down the button on the bottom of the microphone the entire time that you're speaking. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Good evening. Name is George Blees. I've been a 40-year resident of Fairfield. I just recently retired. My background is that I've worked for those 40 years in the financial avenues in New York City as CFO and controller of several companies. Most recently, I was the controller of Young and Rubicam, part of WPP, and I was on the Retirement and Investment Board and Pension Committee for WPP for the last 10 years. So I bring a skill set to this role and experience, and I'm looking to give back to the town. Now that I'm retired, my wife has done so for quite a while as on the board at Wakeman and a few other things. So I'm trying to do the same. So thank you.
Thank you for stepping up. Are there any questions for Mr. Blees? Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis,
Hi.
District 9. Hi, George. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
I just want to say I know you through your son. Our kids are really good friends, and I'm so happy that you stepped forward. I know that you love this town, and I'm going to support you, and thank you for stepping forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Blees regarding this? Online, if you have a comment, just ask to be recognized in the chat. Seeing none, thank you so much for coming. Our town clerk will let you know if you have to come next week or not. Thank you. Next, we're going to wait until next week to have our yearly report on safe streets, which is item number 7. We have Dave Kelly online for item number 8, which he's going to just give us a little overview of our emails. I know we've had some concerns vocalized in the caucus, so I've asked Mr. Kelly to come and just give us a little rundown of some things and let you guys ask questions instead of me going back and forth that way. So thank you, Mr. Kelly, for coming.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me all right.
We can.
Great. Say, I've been working with Marcy on
Wait 1 second. Actually, Mr. Kelly, no, they're saying no.
You don't hear me?
Wait 1 second. We're going to have them turn it up, I think.
Okay.
Online, you can hear perfectly, according to Representative Carroll. Unfortunately, out here, they're having trouble. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly. Try to speak now.
Hello, hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Is that better?
It's a little better. If you just speak a little louder, that might help.
Okay. Marcy asked me to speak with you tonight about trouble that we've had using the RTM email address so that the public is able to reach all the members with an email. We've been continuing a practice for a number of years that's rather taboo by today's email customs, what with anti-spam filters and all that these days. We've offered the RTM email address for a number of years, and when a constituent mails a message there, our town email system forwards copies of that message out to the 40 members. However, what the receiving email systems that you're using see is an email address that might be coming from, say, a Gmail account, but it's coming from the fairfieldct.org email system. And many of the spam filters at the likes of Gmail and Microsoft and Optimum, et cetera, think that that's a spam message and they silently delete it. So we tried something a little different this year, where rather than having our system simply forward the message to you unscathed, we now have the system programmed to generate a new message that looks like it comes from a town email address. In fact, I think they're coming to you from rtm@fairfieldct.org, and that message contains a copy of the constituent's email message within it. So we're sending two versions of the message. If I can maybe share my screen, I can show you what I mean by that. Let me see here. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen, and bringing up my web browser. Can you see that okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, so right now at the top of the RTM webpage, we actually have a place that says email all 40 RTM members, and we have the RTM email address there. And when somebody sends a message to that address, you receive a message that looks like this. It comes from RTM, but it contains I actually took a real message that was sent today, and I'm using that as the example. It contains a copy of the email message, and that's pretty much what the message looks like that the sender sent. However, you'll notice that up on the from line, it does not contain the email address of the sender. So unless that person included their email address somewhere else in the message, as we do ask them to do on the web page, you would have difficulty replying to this person. That's why we're sending two copies of the message to everybody. You'll get a second message that looks like this. It may have the subject, but the sender's original message is just an attachment to this email. And if you click on that attachment, you will now see a copy of the email, including the sender's email address. The reason that we're sending both versions of the message and why you're receiving two emails right now for each message sent to the RTM mailing list is because many people's computers cannot open this second one, where we do get the full email address included in the message. But unless you have Outlook or something like that installed on your computer, when you try to open the attachment containing the message, it may not work for you. So that's why we send the message to everybody two different ways. Now, we can continue operating this way and kind of live with the double messages every time, or we could change the way that we have the public contact the RTM. I took a look at a number of other towns' websites. No one else is doing it through email the way that we are currently doing it. It seems that other towns that do provide a way for their constituents to reach a board or commission do it through a fill-out form on the website. So I've acquired a product and have actually set it up on the RTM website that does just that. So on the RTM website right now, although right now it's just in kind of a test mode, on the left-hand side under resources, the very last item, that's where I've placed it for now, is called Contact the RTM. And if you click that link, you will be brought to a fill-out form, very much like what other towns are doing. And we simply have a field for them to enter their name, their email address, their street address, and then they can type in their message or copy and paste it if they have it in a document into a text box here. And if they want to, optionally, if they need to upload a PDF or a photo or something, there's also a file upload capability here. In fact, I think I kind of filled out the form just to show you what it looks like. So if Mr. Bosch had this available to him and had used it, this is what he would have filled in. He actually did have a PDF on his message. And then at the bottom, he clicks send, and the forms site will send a message to the members. And then what you receive looks something like this. You'll get a kind of an email containing all the fields that the constituent typed in. And if there is a file attached, that will appear as an attachment right here on the email message that you can use whatever viewer you need to view the message. So I'm recommending that we consider discontinuing what we used to call the one-click email address, since it's a bit obsolete in today's email spam world, and switch to this fill out form method of having people reach the board. The advantages to doing this is that the messages are less likely to get caught up in a spam filter on your email carrier system. And you are less likely to get spam messages. The town has fairly strong anti-spam filtering systems in place, and indeed we block about 98% of all messages aimed at the RTM email address as spam, but a few get through. You've probably received a few weird-looking email messages that were mailed to that RTM email address. And you'll stop getting double messages every time a constituent writes. We'll be down to the single message if we were to switch to this method of contacting the RTM.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding this? Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Just really a comment. I definitely think we should do something different, quite frankly, because to be very honest, I've gotten to the point where I just delete all these RTM emails because, here's just a couple of examples. Barracuda Networks Gateway Email Defense, Shopping Malls Summit Toronto in March. I mean, I wonder what the heck that is. But as a result, I don't know what is what, and I just don't pay any attention to them anymore. So something different, I would definitely support that.
Thank you, Representative Astorita. Representative Barahona.
Hi, thanks for that, Representative Barahona, District 6. I couldn't see the screen from where I'm sitting. Is it the constituent's email address viewable in the format that you just shared? Because that's
yes.
Okay.
Yes, one of the fields that's on the fill out form that we require them to fill in is their email address. So it comes through as one of the text fields in the email message that you receive.
Terrific, thanks. And just to follow up, can they email an individual member of the RTM, or is this just bulk for the full RTM?
So your email addresses are still published on the RTM website. And in fact, for each of the districts, we've also laid it out so that if someone wanted to contact all of their representatives in their districts, you'll see that we've provided the email addresses of the 4 members separated by semicolons so that a constituent could easily copy and paste all 4 of the messages into an email address that they would send you directly. This fill out form thing is for when someone wants to address the entire body.
Excellent, thank you. One more follow-up. In that, could there be some link for individuals in the community who don't know what district they are in and who represents them, some clickable, like we have around the election time, where they could by their address know which district they're in? I find that almost no one I talk to in town knows what district they're in and who their representatives are.
So on the RTM website, the 4th link down on the left-hand side is the district map. Would that be?
Yeah, I guess I'm just suggesting that be in multiple places. So before someone sends an email, sometimes it's not on the page they see, or the more places we could locate that information, the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. I like the idea of the web form a lot, but I would be tempted to use it for more than just the emailing the entire RTM. I feel like a lot of the spam that Representative Astorita was just mentioning might still come to us if our email addresses are still published on the web, since there's all these spammers out there looking for anything they can find. So is there an option to use that web form and have people click a box? I want to send it to my, District 5. I want to send it to the whole RTM. I want to send it to this individual. Is that something we could consider?
We could, I guess, make 10 of these pages, one for each district. It might be a little granular to get down to each individual representative. Then we need 40.
There's not a way to do like a pop-down menu of who you're sending it to or something?
Not in this system that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anyone online have a question? Feel free to comment in the chat with your name. Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. Dave, some of these show up in my spam folder and some don't. I mark like the ones that are obviously spam to go to the spam folder, but I'm careful not to block the address, and I think that's correct, right? Because if we block RTM, then we won't get the stuff we really need.
Well, if we block RTM and continue using RTM the way we are, that's true. But if we use the fill out forms, that actually comes straight from the webpage forms vendor. So
going forward, we can actually do that.
well, yeah, I don't expect you would get any email from RTM anymore in any event.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
Representative Georgiadis.
To Georgiadis, District 9. Hi, Dave. To follow up on Representative Garskoff's question, is there any way people can put they have to put their address in? Is there any way we could put the address in and then they could search to find out their district and then maybe they could add the district? Because otherwise, they're going to put their address in, then us, the RTM, will have to go, oh, they live on Melody Lane, blah, 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 blah. So is there any way, search your RTM representatives as part of this form as they're filling it out?
Ooh. See, this is a third-party form, so it's not really integrated into any data files that we have. I'm not sure if we have a look yourself up by your street address database anywhere.
Because this is just a disaster. I mean, we get spam, we get I'm with Representative Astorita. I don't even look at this stuff anymore. It is just so awful, and it wasn't awful 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Whatever we had worked well. So this is awful. So we have to find something that works. And for you to say, oh, well, that doesn't work. Well, something needs to work. So I appreciate your effort, and I encourage you to look further so that we can find something that actually works. Thank you.
Representative Havey.
Representative Lisa Havey, District 9. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, why don't we have rtmmember@fairfield.org as all of our email addresses so that everything can be consistent and we don't have Gmail and Yahoo and, somebody's cousin's server. It's a mess. And the other thing is, why haven't we gone back to the QSend product that did our email?
We did go back to the QSend product. That is our current ticketing system. And the
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
We did go back to the QSend product for our online ticketing system.
Yes, but what about email?
I don't understand what you mean by what about the email.
They have a portion, part of their, Chinese menu was their, an email system.
Are you thinking of Q Notify?
Yeah,
The
that could be.
Kind of the mailing list thing?
It's all part of the Q-Send,
Well,
Men-
we no longer have the QSend website. The town switched to a new website, about 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago.
and that's
So-
terrible as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Representative Steele.
Hey, thank you. Is this not working? Okay, Jeff Steele, District 3. Really? Is it working? Okay. Thanks, Dave. I know my back is to you, but I think these are all really good ideas. I really like especially the idea of someone being able to put in their address, if not their name, and their district pops up with their representatives. I think that'd be really powerful, especially for those who aren't maybe terribly engaged right now or less engaged or in and out, and they've moved around town or moved into town. That would be really helpful. You know, if we have 3 or 4 really good suggestions, and there are probably another 3 or 4 good suggestions, would it make sense for us maybe collectively to put these suggestions together and make them, if not official, something that we can send over as ideas to look at implementing versus us just spitballing, throwing stuff at you? Because there might be some things that we can do to really improve the system versus, and that lets you think about it and see if there are some solutions, because it is worse than it ever was for not only a member of the public, but the members of the RTM and then those who want to communicate with us. So it would really be great to see if what we could do versus, oh, we just can't do it. We can't do it. I'm not saying we can or can't, but could we look into it a little more and maybe put
Yes.
together a list?
Yes, of course. I'm just saying I don't have a mechanism at the moment to accomplish that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Donnie.
Hi, Nancy Downey, District 6. Nice to meet you. My question is, why don't we just, in the meantime, simplify where we go on fairfieldconnecticut.org, our town, and it says the RTM is made up of 40 members, 4 members from each of the town's 10 voting districts. Stop. In there, put that link to that old-fashioned list of street addresses that tell people what district they're in, just in the interim, because I know there was an email recently where I had to look up the address to see what district it was in, because I didn't know. I don't know if anyone else did. But if you could just simply drop that in right now, it would help people. I don't think anyone knows, because I had to find that other list through searching a lot of different places. It's not clear unless I'm stupid and it's clear to someone else. So do you think you could just put that in like tomorrow?
Yeah, we could put in a list, find what district you're in, click here, and it would bring up I think it's a map that it brings up.
It's actually a street list. Yeah. It's got alphabetically. Yeah. That's the one I'm talking about.
District, the next link down, yes, district street listing. Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments online? Put a chat. Representative McCabe.
Sorry. Representative McCabe, District 4. First, I just want to say thank you again for all of the troubleshooting that you're doing to try to make the system work better for us. A quick question about the form. Are we going to be testing the form to see if that's a better solution for folks that are looking to email the entire RTM?
Well, for now, that if you fill out the form, it comes to me, and if you would like to give it a test, I'll leave the link on the page. I just stuck it there tonight to be able to show it to you. But we can leave it there. We can do it as a test where the messages continue to come to me and I'll forward them to the existing mailing list, or we can just activate it and you can see see how it works when the public uses it.
Thank you.
Maybe Mr. Kelly, if if the members who asked questions or made comments today could use that link to send the email and pretend that they're a constituent, and then you could forward it on to me of what it would look like, and I could forward it on to the body. So
Sure.
like Representative Steele could go online. So just refresh everybody's memory of where that testing item is. It's to the left on the RTM page where it says contact the RTM, right? So
That's it.
anyone who asked a question, if you want to put in your comments into writing for Mr. Kelly, and then just pretend you're a constituent, and then he'll forward it to me of what it looks like, and I'll forward it on to the body the way I do. And the way I forward emails to you, I have my own little list because I don't really like that list myself, so or trust it. So I have my own list. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Kelly. Appreciate it.
Okay, good night.
Good night. We're going to move on. Next up, we're going to be updated by Kathleen Simpson and our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Becker, on item number 9, the dispatch collective bargaining agreement, which can be found in our backup starting on page 6. You guys can come on up to the table. I think everybody's here. And just give us a little presentation on it, and then we'll ask questions.
Good evening. Can you hear me? I'm Kathleen Simpson. I'm the HR director. And with me is also Joanne Cordemonch, who's a labor relations specialist. And I want to say I added her to here because she was key in getting, for the management side, getting this contract together and what you're seeing before you tonight. And I want to thank also David Becker, our COO, who worked probably hours and hours and hours to get the costing out done and things done for us. So this was a great team to work with. I also want to acknowledge that the union leadership is here tonight behind us, and also union members, because they were great partners in getting this together. It took time, but it went as smoothly as possible. And so without further ado, I'll highlight the contract revisions and the agreement that you're considering. Just by way of background, our regional dispatch center in Fairfield is unique and extraordinary. These dispatchers, unlike other municipalities, provide critical dispatch emergency response services for not just Fairfield, but for Westport and Easton, and potentially more as we grow. So it is a challenge because unlike other dispatch centers in neighboring towns, they're dealing with many different jurisdictions. And that involves not just knowing Fairfield, but knowing Westport and New Canaan, learning their protocols, procedures, and also understanding the different training and protocols and procedures for each different Westport, Easton, and Fairfield. So the other thing I want to point out is that this is the first contract since we had the merger with Westport. And can I tell you, I am so so happy and grateful about the professionalism that these employees have shown with the merger and coping with the many different challenges of having to be responsible for these different jurisdictions. And we are very lucky in that sense because Joanne, my colleague, and I have been in different places with different dispatch centers. And this is where, again, we have extremely dedicated professional group here. The other thing that we are challenged with when looking at this contract, and we can talk about that as well as we go along, is that there's a lot of competition for dispatchers. It's not an easy place to recruit and retain because of the nature of the job, plus also competing with other things like salaries and things like benefit packages that we may not have, like pension. So that's another piece where it's a reality of not just us, but of other municipalities. So having said that, I'm going to go into just highlighting the summary of what we agreed to. And if you have questions, both myself, Joanne Cordemanch, and David Becker can jump in and try to help answer those. So the union ratified through vote this agreement before you on October 28th, 2024. Right now we have 21 full-time members. The forecasted 25 budgeted salaries total $1,084,316. The current contract for the communication workers expired on June 30th, 2023. And we've been working diligently since then. One of the things that we had to, it happens, there was a change in administration during our negotiations, so that put it back a little bit as well. And then we got back on track with getting to a settlement. The parties agreed to a 2.5% COLA retroactive to July 1st, 2023, and then agreed to bring hourly rates up to market value. And the difference here is that prior to this contract, there would be salary ranges, which was kind of confusing. And I also think wasn't realistic to show really what the value of that hourly rate was for the dispatcher, the new dispatcher coming in, and then the seasoned dispatcher as time went on. So that was a little different, and I'll go into depth more as we go along here. But the wages and compensation tables are there for you, which we have a new hourly rate kicking in for fiscal year 25, and then 2% COLAs thereafter in 26 and 27. What's important though is that we have a zero COLA for, I'm sorry, I'm good. To make up for the fact that we are catching up the fiscal rates. So for fiscal year 7/1/24 through 6/30/25, we're putting placement into the new hourly salary schedule with a 0% COLA. So the, sorry, I'm back in here. The another piece to recognize too, we have a supervisory level of telecommunicators 2, and they'll be calculated a flat differential amount of $2 more than the dispatcher hourly rate, with the same experiential benchmarks you'll see in the table, which talks about anniversary dates of 2 years, 3 years, 4 to 9 years, 10 to 15 years, 16 to 20 years, and 21 plus years. And that, keep in mind, is trying to keep in mind, we want to retain these employees because that's super important in light of what the work they do and the competition in other municipalities to get good dispatchers and keep them. So there's a shift differential that increased from $1.25 to $3, and a midnight that increased from $2 to $5, again, recognizing that that's effective July 1st, 2024. And that's again to recognize the fact that the hours they work, having to work into the 24/7 operations, and comparing it to other similarly situated dispatch centers and these type of employees from other municipalities. The cost of living, I went over it before, but they're designed to ensure that employees' pay is in line with the consumer price index. And again, since the hourly rates were adjusted in the fiscal year of 7/1/24 to 6/30/25, the second year of the contract, there is no COLA in that year. The health and welfare benefits, something that, of course, is really essential to keeping employees and to recruiting them. We agreed to a major language clarification in the contract. The previous language was with a lot of sections was so much confusing. And also we failed to provide options of a more affordable, high deductible health plan with an HSA similar to the THEA plan, which you may know, to offer to employees. So the union agreed to cost shares as follows. For the PPO, which is currently in effect, 16% increase effective 7/1/25, 17% effective 7/1/26. And with the HDHP, which is a new concept for, like to get employees to consider, the cost share will be 12.5% effective 7/1/25 and 13% effective 7/1/26. This cost share is lower than the PPO cost share to encourage migration into the plan, with ongoing education by human resources regarding the plan design and financial benefits for the employees. The retiree medical benefits would continue to expose the town to some major financial expenses that are also difficult to predict. So as a result, the parties agreed that employees hired on or after January 1, 2025 are not eligible to receive retiree medical benefits. The effective date and duration will commence July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2027. That's 4 years. And that's basically the agreement in a nutshell. I also would like to add that Joanne worked really hard with union leadership to clean up a lot of ambiguous, confusing language that was also antiquated to make things clearer for the parties to avoid potential grievances and misunderstandings on how the contract applies to the members. So with that, we can take questions.
Thank you. Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. Can you or someone, maybe Mr. Becker, remind me of how the cost share has worked out with the other towns? How does that work again?
So Westport pays for 1/3 and Fairfield pays for 2/3, but it's a Fairfield center and it's Fairfield employees.
Thank you. So is it reimbursed to us by Westport, or they pay directly for some of the employees, or how does that work?
Yeah, on a quarterly, so everything flows through our books in a self-supporting account within the budget. And then once a quarter, we report out to them and we get a reimbursement payment, and then we true it up at the end of all 4 quarters at the end of the year. There's a couple of, like where the dust settles on certain accounts, and then we true everything up and then close out the books for the year. And then we ultimately get 1/3.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. Thanks so much for presenting this information to us. I have a few questions, and I did review the information in advance, but if for some reason I'm asking you questions that are in the materials, then I apologize. So were we able to benchmark our steps against other negotiated and disclosed contracts, like in area towns or like throughout the state?
At all.
Are you
Sorry.
asking for us, so we were able to benchmark comparatives between other towns? Salaries? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I compared to, unfortunately for us, Fairfield is kind of a weird place. We don't really compare apples to apples with other municipalities or cities based on population, economics. So I compared to the surrounding towns because that's where our competition lies for the most part. But I also took some cities and some kind of outlining towns. And the range of a starting salary ranged from about $24 an hour to $29 an hour. 24 being the city of New Haven that still retains a pension for all of its employees, and 29 was in Norwalk, which I believe we lost 2 of our dispatchers to Norwalk, and they also do not have a pension, but their wages were a lot higher than ours. So I did do a comparable that way.
I would add too that unlike other municipalities, we're regional. So it's a lot more responsibility, training, and understanding of even location. So when you put those factors in mind, it's a little different, if that helps.
Okay, great. And then, thank you. And then my next question is on the cost of living adjustment. How is that determined?
Cost of living. So it's based on the Consumer Price Index, which we can't forecast what it will be in the future, but because we upgraded their salaries to be more competitive with the surrounding towns, they agreed to take a 2% cost of living increase, not knowing what those increases will be in the next 2 years.
Okay, so it's it's just negotiated into the contract, right? Because I saw in the contract that I'm like in section 16 something, I just lost. Oh, 1608. So it's in accordance with plan regulations, but it's not like we're tying it to like the Social Security CPI or something like
Yeah,
that.
I don't even know what that language means. But yeah, it's based on the Consumer Price Index. So typically, like our retirees get a 3% cost of living increase for the most part, either every year or every other year.
Well, I guess depends upon the consumer price and, yeah.
Right.
The pension rate. Here we go.
Yeah. Yep, sorry. 1608 addresses the pension. So,
Oh, sorry.
legacy employees within
Yeah,
the
okay.
unit that the pension would still apply to, new hires, it doesn't apply to, and that speaks to how the pension fund itself does the COLAs on that end. But I think they spoke to how this was done, which is negotiation wise, and we have a sense of benchmarks. And yes, this is actually to some degree the 2% in the outlying years, and even the 2.5% are at or a little bit below what we're seeing in other contracts. But in this instance, because of bringing everything up to market, we were able to negotiate a little bit of savings and lowering that just by a hair on the outlying years. But the biggest focus for this negotiation was really the current year and getting up to market. And I would just say on that, and it was answered a little bit, we're not, we believe we're sort of at market. It's hard to apples it. We were trying not to be particularly ahead of the market, but we certainly don't want to be below the market. We want to be where we thought was about the right spot to retain and have, be able to recruit, properly and have, a good morale in the center. As we've spoken a lot in the past about the center, at some point we do want to consider, other towns and some other things to help strengthen it overall, which would be great. But you've got to get the house in order, and this is one of the key aspects for our employees.
Okay, last question, and then I promise I'll stop. And then in terms of the cost sharing, we are able to benchmark that as well to see how we align with other towns.
Actually, our cost shares tend to be on the lower side in general terms. But because we got such other big asks from them, we felt that maintaining that, at least for the rest of this contract, coupled with the more affordable, high deductible plan, more affordable for the employees, that would be helpful in terms of, you can't get everything all in one contract. So we kind of worked on some of the big issues and, there's still more work that needs to be done, I'm sure.
Well, if you compare it to other contracts, the cost shares are online. And also you got to look at the issue that we're pretty much being consistent with other contracts. Within Fairfield, I'm sorry, yes.
Not asking about other contracts in Fairfield. Did I misunderstand?
That's the other way to triangulate it. So it's a fair point. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Representative Ocampo.
Hi, Alexandra Ocampo, District 6. Not a question, just a comment and kudos. I'm an HR director myself. Don't do collective bargaining, but certainly rewriting a handbook. But to hear that all parties, management, and represented employees sat down together in such a positive, respectful, professional way is always wonderful to hear. So kudos there. I know the pain of encouraging employees to try out the new high deductible health plan. So I appreciate the strategy of the lower premium share, and I also appreciate the deposit into health savings account and the clawback provision in the event that folks leave before retirement. So a lot of really innovative and incentivizing health and welfare benefits in the agreement. But just kudos to all of you for working so hard to come up with something that everyone agrees on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carroll.
Hi, Chris Carroll, District 8, and I apologize for not being in person. David, I think I'm following up with you on a question Josh had asked. That division between Fairfield and Westport of a 2/3, 1/3 split, is that based on population size, a history of the number of calls? How is that calculated? How is that figured out? And is it ever reviewed?
So that would predate me. I could get the exact formula, but it was a combination of those factors, as I understand it. There's an interlocal agreement, and you go even further. The New Canaan piece is actually an interlocal agreement between Westport and New Canaan. So Westport is basically covering Westport and the New Canaan piece, and then Fairfield. But we are certainly the more substantial piece to it by volume, both population and call volume. And as we've evaluated things, even just from a growth factor from when they originally sat down almost a decade ago and tried to begin putting this together, and then actually had it come to fruition a few years ago. If anything, Fairfield has grown the most out of all the partners, and seems to be on the biggest trajectory to do so. So I don't necessarily see anybody trying to change that in any direction. It is certainly the practices in the center are reviewed. There's a control board between both municipalities and meets on a regular basis, and and make sure the center is running smoothly. So.
Thank you. That's a slightly off target, but I appreciate the information. Thank you.
Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. My questions have been answered. I just want to say thank you to our dispatchers. You really are frontline workers, and it's an extraordinarily difficult and stressful job. And I don't know if the RTM has come through on a tour of the dispatch center. We may have done that in small groups, but I would certainly like to do that for any members of the body who have not, and especially those on our, Public Safety Committee. But again, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Representative Wolk.
Jay Wolk, District 5. I ditto what Representative Zezima just said. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, everybody, for coming, for all your work on that, and thank you to all our dispatchers. We look forward to voting on this next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Moving on to the purchase of 254 Greenfield Street, which is agenda item 10 and can be found starting on page 48 of our backup. We have our Director of Community and Economic Development, Mark Barnhart, here to give us a summary of this item. Welcome, Mr. Barnhart.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Mark Barnhart, Director of Community Economic Development. Members may recall a few years back, we had the opportunity to acquire 244 Greenfield Street, and we're currently constructing in partnership with Habitat for Humanity 2 duplexes on that parcel, so 4 units of affordable home ownership. At that time, we reached out to the property owner of the adjoining parcel, 254, and I indicated that if he were ever interested in selling the property, we would be delighted to talk to him about that. So now we have the opportunity to acquire 254 Greenfield Street. It's a little over half the size, 50% larger than the lot 244, but it's really a very small parcel on which is situated a 2-bedroom, single-story, very modest dwelling unit. which is currently a rental investment property. The intent here upon acquisition is to combine it with property to the rear that the town already owns, for which we have already received approval by the Parks and Rec Commission to use to create a standard size building lot and then construct additional affordable homeownership units on the property. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have at this time.
Are there any questions regarding this item? Representative Barrett.
That additional, Steve Barrett's District 7, that additional land from the Parks and Rec Department, is that part of Tungus Hill Park?
It's the unimproved portion. It's currently wooded. When we went before the Parks and Rec Commission and inquired as to the disposition of the property to the rear of 244, we drew a straight line all the way across in anticipation that this opportunity might present itself. So, yes, it is the unimproved
We would be
portion.
taking land from Tungus Hill Park.
The unimproved portion, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding this item? Representative Steele.
Hi, Jeff Steele, District 3. Hi, Mark. Just a couple quick questions. If this were not to be approved, where would the funds be allocated to? Like, what is this taking from?
Yeah, if we weren't to use ARPA dollars, the authorization both from the Board of Selectmen and from the Affordable Housing Committee is to utilize funds from the Housing Trust Fund to fill any gap.
What can you just, like, in 30 seconds, what is the status in terms of our affordable housing situation goals and where we're at versus those goals?
Are you referring to a moratorium or other larger?
No, just in general, what we're.
We have about 3% of our housing stock is classified, recognized by the state as being affordable. Obviously, there's a need for more affordable units. We have presently 45 affordable home ownership units in town. This would add to that inventory eventually. That's the intent. That's probably the hardest one for us to create, given housing costs where they are. We are closing in on submitting our first moratorium, hopefully within the next week or so. And then it'll go through that process with state review.
Do we have a certain goal in mind in terms of percent of stock or number of homes?
The goal that we identified in our most recent affordable housing plan was to look at roughly a couple hundred units that would be added to our inventory to increase our stock over time. That's aspirational. It's more that I think from the committee's perspective, looking to create additional housing options for folks at all levels.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Estorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Just a question on the ARPA funds to follow up on Representative Steele's. Is the intent to use the ARPA funds because if we don't use it now, we're going to lose it? Is that the rationale behind that?
I think in my previous visits with this body, there have been some interest on the part of the membership to look at potentially using ARPA dollars for housing acquisition or for affordable housing purposes. I think this is in recognition of that interest. But we do have a housing trust fund. In the event that those dollars are not forthcoming, we do have funds within the housing trust to cover the cost of acquisition.
Do you have to close by the end of the year, though, in order to use the ARPA funds?
I believe you have to commit the dollars. Certainly, we'd be in a position to commit the dollars prior to the end of the year.
Okay, thanks.
Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret. I'm sorry, Margaret Horton, District 10. It's actually just a follow-up on Representative Estorita's question. First of all, thank you I'm excited for anything that we can be doing to create more affordable housing within town. I really appreciate the work on this. But just with the ARPA funds, if this weren't to go through, the ARPA funds, then I would imagine it would be hard to reallocate those before the end of the year. So they sort of end up in maybe not getting used.
I might have to defer to our
Mr. Becker. Yeah,
Mr.
come on up,
Becker
Mr.
on
Becker.
use of ARPA dollars. Correct me if I was wrong in terms of ARPA allocations.
Yeah, so we have this on next up for the ARPA piece. And we do believe that with the Board of Selectmen had already done the contract piece for this, which allows us to do the encumbrance. So it's not a problem as long as it goes through the RTM. Next week, we already have the authorization to sign the contract and then do the encumbrance on the funds, which meets the ARPA guideline for by the end of the year.
Thank
So-
you. I guess my question is actually more, what if this body were not to approve this? Then those ARPA funds that would be going towards this, I would imagine it would be hard fairly late in the game at this point to reallocate those funds.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, I mean, we do some legwork. We are going to come back very soon with the final zeroing out. But we are in the home stretch with that, so it's only a few $100,000, of which we're cruising with the next few days to be at zero. So not that, I can tell you tomorrow where to spend a few $100,000. I mean, there's lots of different things, but I would say it's easier said than done at this point. So we are hopeful, and this was it was a good opportunity, and as Mr. Barnhart had said, it also was in listening to so we did try to listen to what the bodies had said, and that one of the items that did come from some members, quite a few members in this body, was something like this. So we actually feel it to be quite fitting as we try to hit numerous areas on the way down to zero.
Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. Thank you, as Margaret said, for all your work on this. It is really important. Just how much money is in the Housing Trust Fund? And if you had to use it for this because it wasn't approved, would that impact any other ideas you were going to maybe use for something else?
We have about $900,000 in the Housing Trust Fund at the moment. So this would represent about a third. Of course, what we found is that no different than what everyone else is experiencing. Housing costs, land costs are extremely high. So acquisition costs, even for this particular property, are pretty substantial. So it would reduce our ability to look at other opportunities in the near future.
Thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Bastilli, District 5. Thank you so much for bringing this before us. I'm really impressed with your ability to negotiate this, because I think that it's in a great location given the other piece of property that we've acquired. My only question that I didn't see on the appraisal report is, there any underground oil tanks or any environmental stuff that we need to be worried about that we might not know about yet?
No, we asked those questions and received assurances there were no unforeseen issues, especially with regard to an underground storage tank. So no.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a list of 6 people here, so I see you, Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esma, District 4. Mark, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you here giving us this kind of news. And I think I ask you this all the time, but at this moment, do you see anything on the horizon similar to this? Something that wouldn't be on our radar, but other parcels, other things going on in town that, may end up being an acquisition? I know you're always looking and working on it, and I really appreciate the work you do.
The Affordable Housing Committee and myself are always on the lookout for opportunities where we have been in conversations with several parties, but nothing imminent at this time.
There were some amendments in May made to 8-30G that I think should have a positive impact on our ability. I mean, we're about to hit a moratorium, but maybe in the next 4 years. Is that your understanding? Middle housing, things like that?
Yeah, there was a change made most recently that allows communities like Fairfield that do allow multifamily units as of right to get some credit for them.
Yeah. And I think probably a closer look at our zoning probably would help.
I'm sure the body's aware that the Planning and Zoning Commission is presently reviewing an update to our draft Plan of Conservation and Development, which does incorporate many of the recommendations that were in the most recent Affordable Housing Plan.
Great. Thank you again, Mark.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Hi, Mark. How are you? To follow up on Representative Steele's question about how many affordable units we have and what our goals are, when you're tallying that, do you take into consideration the loss of affordable housing? As you know, I live in District 9. My whole neighborhood were modest WW2 homes that people called starter homes, but could easily fall into the affordable home category at one time. And as they get torn down and replaced, do you calculate that into sort of a gain, loss, net? Thank you.
I think you're referring to what we would consider naturally occurring affordable housing, and there used to be more of it, obviously, in Fairfield. It's not part of the inventory that we provide to the state because it doesn't have a restrictive covenant or anything that would qualify for the state to actually consider it as affordable housing. But we know of those situations within our community. And you're right, there's less of that. We know that to be true. We don't have any firm data to support it at this point, but we know anecdotally that there is less of it for sure.
So you couldn't, it wouldn't be possible to take something that was a starter home and put it into the stock because it wasn't created for that purpose?
No, that's one of the ways in which we can create affordable housing is it doesn't always mean that it entails new construction. So we've had programs over the years to both acquire and then rehab existing housing units in exchange for a restrictive covenant so that we could count that towards our affordable housing inventory. That program is still exists and we still look for those opportunities. There's just fewer of them because of where housing costs have gone over the last decade or so.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. I am proud to own the fact that I was one of the RTM members that was eager to see the ARPA funds go to this use. And the rationale is because Fairfield is one of many communities that have taken advantage of this funding to be able to do things that normally we would not be able to do. I give enormous credit to you, Mark, and to the Affordable Housing Commission, who are dedicated members of the community who are always on the lookout because it's like finding buried treasure to even have a lot that we could purchase. And you had laid the groundwork so that when this perfect storm of opportunity occurred, we were able to take advantage of it and to apply these very important funds for a very important purpose. We are not alone in using these funds for affordable housing. And I'm really, really grateful and excited that we were able to take advantage of this. And I thank you.
Thank you, Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 9. Unfortunately, I have to go after Representative McCabe, who just stole my thunder. But I really appreciate what you've done, Mark, and starting the process on getting this property as well, right next to the one that we approved, I don't know, a year or so ago. I too was one of those people that said we should be using some ARPA funding, as other communities have, for affordable housing when we were buying that Quincy Street property. And I'm glad to hear that we have close to $1 million in the funding that we can keep for other opportunities that may come in the future, because as we all know, these properties are quite expensive. I'd say the only thing I'm a little disappointed about that it's costing a little, about $100,000 more than the property that was right next door. So, but yeah, I'm glad that money. I would say at this point, it's time to get it earmarked and used for that purpose. I mean, we could nickel and dime and look for other little projects to try to get approved, but we're October or November 18th. I don't see that personally happening. So thank you for getting this done. I appreciate it.
We'll say that in reference to the parcel we purchased, it's the lot at 254 is about 50% larger than the other lot, and it works out on a per square foot basis, roughly equivalent on a dollar per square foot basis between the two acquisition costs. So we thought it was a fair deal and in line with the appraisal we had done for the property.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative O'Neill, did you still have a question? Great, your turn.
Thank you. Kristen O'Neill, District 5. I just wanted to double check. This property is in the McKinley School District?
I don't know that for sure, but I would guess probably so, given its location. Yeah.
Thank you. Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Josh Garskoff, District 5. Slightly different point here, and I'm not sure if there's someone who can answer this, but so we're spending several $1 million, very close to this, to deal with flooding from Rooster River, from overdevelopment of this watershed. And we're proposing to build in this watershed, and I'm curious about how this would impact potential flooding in the area. How close are we to the actual tributary? Is there a tributary right back there going through there? Can you talk to that at all?
Well, firstly, the lot we're purchasing is already improved with a structure on it. And then we did check with our friends in conservation as well as engineering, and we don't anticipate any issue with regard to impact to a watershed or any other natural resources.
So by code, it would have to, all the water that collects on the roof and stuff has to be collected on site and can't leave the site, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yes.
So we're not going to.
So we haven't fully designed, obviously, that piece, but that would be the standard that we would adhere to.
And sometimes you can go beyond that standard too, if it warrants it to try to help with flooding, if that's a possibility.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Did I see Representative Ratsky's hand up earlier? No. Okay, Representative Barahona.
I represent Barahona District 6. Second, everything that Representative McCabe said. Always glad to see affordable housing stock being added. Having said that, I think Representative O'Neill was getting at something that we need to be mindful of. And actually, we had a constituent email this body, Greg Bosch, earlier today, encouraging us to make sure that TPZ, Board of Ed, everyone is working in concert. Otherwise, we are, creating an additional issue with the Board of Education and the racial balance plans. And, I want this development. This is blocks from me. I'm probably the closest member to this actual physical site. I think it's a great use of space. I think we need to do it. I also want to make sure that we are looking in other areas of town and making sure that we're being mindful of putting affordable housing throughout our community. So just wanted to make that point. And also, there is a current resident there who is assuming that the rent is relatively affordable for that person. And I think I read in the backup that the landlord was concerned about making sure they gave enough notice to that person. Can you just make my little social work heart feel at ease that that current tenant is being somehow supported in finding an alternative residence that would be affordable to them?
Absolutely. I think throughout this process, both the current owner, landlord, and I were concerned about that. And in fact, the timing couldn't be better in that we have been working with another property elsewhere in town that is creating, renovating and has available 2-bedroom units, comparable quality, if not superior, and would provide an opportunity if she chooses to relocate there seamlessly.
Thank you. Any other questions before Representative McCabe has a second? Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Oh, Representative Shea.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Chris Shea, District 2. So it says that you're proposing 2 to 4 units. Why isn't it like 4?
I think that would be our intent, but that may require some relief from existing regulations with zoning. I believe that's certainly attainable, but we didn't want to be specific because we haven't laid it out yet in terms of an actual development plan for the site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other people, representatives that have not asked any questions? Go ahead, Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. A quick plug to the fellow members of the RTM to look at the new version of the POCD. It would be great if we were to create more zones that allowed for multifamily housing, and that would relieve McKinley, for example, from having to bear the burden, but we have to do some changes to our zoning code. So there's my plug.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the body? Thank you, Mr. Barnhart. We appreciate you coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going to move on to additional ARPA reallocations. Agenda item 11. Mr. Becker is back up to provide us a summary. This starts on page 76.
Okay, so would you like me to just do some highlights on some of the newer projects versus a full update?
Yeah, just any
is that all right?
changes. Yep.
So this encompasses 2 rounds of approvals by the Board of Selectmen. That then was one single from the Board of Finance coming across. So item number 1 is going to be the 254 Greenfield Street property, which you just heard. The next one is at the main library, an outdoor patio space, which included, as in the notes, replacing and expanding the current area that exists, and they're looking forward to some expanded programming in that area. The next item is fire station renovations and design. So this is the 5 firehouses for conceptual design work, estimated at $15,000 per location, and also design work at the apparatus maintenance facility. The apparatus maintenance facility is currently at station number 2. And it is absolutely bursting at the seams. So this envisions moving it to a secondary site. One of the places that we're looking is at the Fire Training Center, on the grounds there, building a structure and moving the maintenance offsite to its separate, larger, and more better designed facility. And then the additional costs within the $370,000 is $280,000 for full construction design documents on station number 4, which would be the first of the renovated firehouses. And that is the building that is the oldest, in the worst shape, and the one that is certainly bursting at the seams the most out of every one of them. And so this gets us there, and part of doing this on the ARPA allocation and now is the hope is that we get to a point at a minimum for that one station in the February to March timeframe to be able to actually load that in for the bonding allocations at that time to break ground on that renovation starting in the spring, summer timeframe. So it brings it to that point, and it also gets more accurate dollars on the entire waterfall capital plan in time for all the other approvals, because that was one of the big question marks on the accuracy. The next is a radio project for the fire department, $150,000. So as many may recall, We spent roughly $7.5 million, a large portion of that, several million coming from grants. But the public safety radio network has been moved from basically the Stone Ages to the current iteration, which is riding off of the state's land mobile radio network, which for all intents and purposes, I'd say, you know, at least about 90, almost 95% of the way there. There's some final rollout pieces. With that, there were certainly things that were left off, largely for dollar reasons. And one of them has to do with the way that the fire department's operational channels function. And we believe that that's a safety gap that as they're getting closer to going live with those components needs to be addressed. One of the reasons to put this into ARPA and to get this moving now is that it also takes 12 months for them to even get the parts in to then be able to do this. So this is several spare apparatus along with all of the frontline apparatus, getting these repeater units added. And this allows us, if approved next week, to immediately put the order in and start the countdown clock on difficult parts. The next component here is item number 5, the police department engines. This is for the smaller of their 2 police department boats. So they do have certainly a very well-run marine division that works through ensuring essentially as close to 100% uptime as possible. As many who've been around longer, they've probably seen many times doing new engines on the boats. So they keep them at what I'd argue is a shorter, lifespan than you may in the personal space. But that's an important piece of making sure that they're always up and running. So there is a grant that they utilize, and for a port security grant for sustainability. So they'll use about half of it for that, and then half of it they did not have necessarily anything pre-budget at this time. So without having to cut into an existing line, it's a small allocation that gets them to the finish line to get this going. So that's $23,800. That would get done this winter if approved. And the next piece is item number 6, which is the police headquarters rehab. So this is an existing project, not a new project. And what's happened here is they were working on some amount of upgrades within the building. They were going to phase it. Actually, earlier this year, the Board of Finance said, stop trying to kind of piecemeal phase this. We want to see what this project's going to look like. And you probably want to just come in and do it in one shot, and it'll actually probably be more economical, and be able to get a better picture as to what you're trying to do. So with that, we assigned a project manager to it. To some degree, kind of flipped the whole thing on its head and said, well, all right, what's the bucket of money? What do we have? How would we go about doing this? And one of the things that we determined was, with the money that was there, we'd be able to get to the full construction design and estimated document phase to come forward for an allocation, is just to do the project. But one of the things that they were struggling with was, you've got to have bathrooms, and they're going to be renovating in already dated bathroom spaces, and they're trying to have male and female locker rooms and and set up. So instead of wasting money with a trailer or building a makeshift in a different area in the building, we said, let's, within this process, determine exactly where they need to be, and let's build at least 2 bathrooms in the exact spot, and then you can kick off the project. So they did send the bathroom specifically out to bid. They did come up with real numbers, and this represents bringing that project to the 100% plus the bathrooms being done. And so this is a very accurate number because of the fact that it went out to bid. And then the rest of the allocation will come another time. So this gets us to the point to be able to move forward with that. The next thing, same, so senior center renovation, this is $40,000. It's for, it's to finish the project in the kitchen. This is actual, they've done, about $850,000 almost worth of work there. This is the final piece for the hood in the kitchen, and it's based on actuals from a bid, and they're off by $40,000. So that brings that to that point. We have other minor adjustments in here that are some reductions. I don't know if you want me to go through that, but I think.
No,
yeah.
that's okay for time. If anyone has any questions about them, they can from looking at the backup. Any questions for Mr. Becker on this item? Representative, I'm gonna butcher your last name, Contrario. Pioretsky, sorry.
Thank you. Pierre Radsky, District 10. I don't know if everyone can hear me. I'm looking at item number 46 on page 80. It says sidewalk Southports, project canceled and funds reallocated. If you could speak to that.
So this is actually something that was done back in, it's called winter, if not spring. This was, yeah, so you're going to see this actually coming on later today now in a bonding allocation at this point. This was done, this isn't a current allocation piece, like this was done a long time ago. They had originally planned to use ARPA funds predating our administration. They originally planned to use ARPA funds for the connectivity piece, but that took, I want to say, 3 or 4 years at least. So the ARPA allocation was reallocated, thinking that it wasn't realistically even going to it wasn't even going to be able to use ARPA at all. And at this stage, even if you wanted to use ARPA, dollar-wise, it's actually now a more substantial figure to get you there. So we are, later on the agenda tonight, going to have that item as a bonding adjustment to true that up to still get it done. So it was never, even in here, it was never about not doing it. It was more of a timing issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Steele.
Just a quick question, Jeff Steele, District 3, and maybe you're going to address this, or maybe you already did. The remaining 272,000, how will that be allocated if we only have like 6 weeks or 5 weeks? What happens to that?
Yep. So, we have a number of different smaller projects that we're trying to that we're considering. We're planning to have it in a packet to the Board of Selectmen no later than Friday, because they're holding a special meeting on Monday for that. So we are there's a few different things. So possibly Safe Corridor program. One of them is also possibly the flood. We're actually tomorrow going to having a meeting related to the flood and erosion flood resiliency master plan for the whole town. So we've got 350,000 allocated. We believe that may turn into a slightly larger project. So that may be one of the items. Currently, there are several of us on the operations and capital side of the house that are working through, with different department heads, trying to just make sure we buttoned up any needs that anybody has that might be a good fit for it. So
will that probably, whatever is added, come to us Monday? Is this going to be like last minute?
In December, it'll be in December.
December, okay.
So, yeah, it's current, yeah, there's a few ways to do it. So right now it's slated for December, but we're trying to juggle the timeline, so.
We'll see that in December. We'll see you in December. Representative Pistilli.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Sharon Bastilli, District 5. On line item number 3 on the fire station renovations, we had taken a tour of the Jennings Road Fire Station. I don't know what number that is. And you had mentioned 2, yeah, and you had mentioned that we're thinking of moving the maintenance to the fire school? Like, we saw like where the maintenance is, there's no room to bring a truck inside, so they have to do all the maintenance outside. But that's included in the 370,000, or can you give more details? Because that doesn't seem like
Yeah.
a whole lot of money.
So included in here is 15,000 per location for conceptual design phase, and that includes the apparatus maintenance. So each of the locations get a conceptual design, and then 280,000 for Station 4 for the construction design and cost estimating piece. So later, once you get past the conceptual design, which will also give us a slightly more accurate number to put into the capital plan for all of the sites. When you want to go to construction design documents, you'll need similar figures like in Station 4 for all those other projects of varying amounts, because some of them are a couple $1 million projects, like the apparatus. You're going to build a new apparatus maintenance facility. It's probably a $2 or $3 million. So this will get us to being able to tell you, estimate that whether it's a 2 or a 3, and it'll have us at a conceptual. Is it a 5-bay or a 6-bay, or right to that end? And then you'll then have to spend, a few $100,000 to go to full construction design. But typically on a project like that, if you at least get to the conceptual piece with the cost estimator, we believe that we'd be able to incorporate most likely the full construction design piece into whatever appropriation we go to for the whole project, and then take them one by one. So this gets us, a better number though inside of all of the waterfall capital
Okay,
plans.
yeah, so more of that number is for the design, would be for the design of the maintenance, the new maintenance facility, as opposed to all the other conversations.
No, the bulk of the 370 is $280,000 for the construction design and costing for one firehouse, which is Station number 4.
Okay, got it.
Which would
Thank
be
you.
the first project. So it's just, the rest of it is smaller allocations spread out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative McDermott.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 9. David, do you know how many hours are on those engines, the police boat engines, and what do we do with them when we take them off? Do we sell them, scrap them? How does that work?
I can get you both of those pieces of information. I don't have that in front of me, but I can get you both.
I mean, I don't remember how many years ago we approved the ones that are on there now, but I would think if there weren't, I don't know, 1,000 hours or 750 hours or whatever, that they'd be usable for something else and could be sold, but unless they use them for parts. But I think they've changed that engine since we got the last engines. So
I'll get you something from the police department on that.
Great, you can just submit it to me and then
Yeah,
I'll forward
yeah.
it on to the body. Thank you, Representative Havey.
Representative Havey, District 9. I have a question about, the question was asked what to do with this surplus. I would really like it to be considered more strenuously that the 10,000 plus be added back in for the diversity and inclusion consultant. I'm sure there's others on this board who would agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the body? Oh, Representative Shea.
Hi, Representative Shea, District 2. I saw the proposal from the architectural firm for the design. Did that go out to bid? Did you get other proposals from other architectural firms? I didn't see anything in the backup.
So it hasn't been necessarily decided that that's going to be the firm. That is one that is on a current set of bids. So we certainly could utilize them under existing terms, but it hasn't been decided yet which firm will ultimately do any of the work.
So that's just a placeholder for your funding request?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Rock.
Representative Rock, District 2. David, when did you say, so sidewalks for Southport, that would be coming back into the agenda? Where does that fall? I'm just looking now, just want to.
On the agenda, we have Southport sidewalk connectivity, which is agenda item number 14. So it comes, there's two more items after this, and then I'm going to speak to that.
Great, thank you so much. I didn't see it.
Any other questions or comments from, oh, thank you. Whoa, that might be a little loud. Everyone okay with that loud? Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the body? Going once? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to the next item. Moving on to agenda item 12, which is the early voting grant. Again, Mr. Becker will provide us the summary, which starts on page 100 of our backup.
Okay, so this is so it's $17,519.02. This is from the Connecticut Secretary of State, and this was another round they've done earlier this year. They sent funds down in similar fashion to assist the registrars with extra costs. So early voting was certainly a costly endeavor. And so this will not cover all of the costs, but it certainly makes a dent in it. I was sitting at my desk today working to help them process through many of the costs for personnel. And certainly adds up all day, every day for weeks on end. And so if you look through, they have a couple of pieces here with the write-up on what they would spend it on. They don't just have to spend it on personnel, but their intent, and as they are processing through, is to largely spend it on personnel. But they were also going to spend it on some equipment and materials. So, you know, one of the items I believe that they used it for was like all of the envelopes and whatnot have to be transported in bags. So you wouldn't think of it, but you've got to buy more bags that can be secured, things like that. So some of the items that they allocated towards will get to be reused in the future as well. And so, you know, that's one of the items. So they have a proposal, which I think was about 4 or 5 pages into here, where they sort of laid out some of the items that they were going to put it towards. And, you know, those items are in there as well. So I don't think there's a lot to explain, but it's, you know, it's a little bit of extra background.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions regarding the voting grant? Seeing none, we're going to move on. Moving on to the arts grant, agenda item 13. It starts on page 164 of your backup. Mr. Becker, that's still you. Oh, Mr. Barnhart stuck around.
So he's going to.
Wonderful.
Is bringing in a relief pitcher. So this is a small grant we applied for and received a $1,000 grant from the Office of the Arts. This past year, we reapplied under the Sporting Arts Grant Program, and it's $1,000. So it would help support the work of the Fairfield Arts Commission.
Great, thank you. Any questions regarding this item or comments? Seeing none, that's great. Thank you. Moving on to the Southport Sidewalk Connectivity Project, agenda item 14, found on page 181 of our backup. Here we go, Mr. Becker. Oh, you got more backup. Wonderful.
Good evening. I'm Anthony Santiago. I'm a little closer. Okay. I'm Anthony Santiago, one of the senior civil engineers for Town of Fairfield. All right. Project in question is the Southport Community Connectivity Project. It's a project we have going on Route 1. Sorry, on Route 1 on the intersection of Halls Highway going on to Pease Avenue. It will consist of connecting with new as well as rehabilitated sidewalks, as well as some traffic calming procedures, updated traffic signals as well. Turn out where to go next. Excuse me. So I think Anthony's doing a great job. He doesn't come to the boards that often, but you guys are hopefully a less intimidating group than the Board of Finance was. So it's good for you guys.
Thank you.
Gentle on Anthony. So just this was actually part of a non-recurring capital allocation. So this is one item within the broader resolution. So what we're going to do here is increasing this specific piece. You increase the overall resolution, but it's focused specifically on this piece. So this has taken several years. So why is the project more? Obviously, if you took the prior year dollars and now you've gone through all the permitting pieces, working with the state, the DOT, utility companies, so there's numerous complexities to this. So it goes back to the question why I moved out of ARPA, why, now coming back now is, we're ready, to rock with the project, but it definitely has taken a long time and nobody really knew when that was going to occur. So if you look at this, it was originally forecast to be about $460,000 in 2018, 2019 dollars. So beyond being a more complex project, it also is a more expensive project. So the revision to $1,060,000 includes the actual bid. This is now gone out to bid, so we're talking actuals, which is important, plus a 20% contingency. So we're largely restating that section of the resolutions focused on that section tonight.
Great, thank you. Any questions regarding this item? Representative Radsky.
So what's the rough timeline for completion of the project?
Given that we're at the end of the year here, construction is not going to be able to begin until probably spring of next year.
And then completion?
I'm not entirely sure of that offhand. Probably a year.
And I apologize if I'm missing it in here. Exactly which area is going to be affected? It says, it's going to go along Post Road from Pease Avenue to Halls Highway. Is there some sort of way to look at an actual map of where these projects will take place, just so I can help visualize it?
We do have a small page here with me. I don't have the entire set with me, I'm afraid, but I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, he could show you that now just in person if you want the one copy.
And if you could also just send it through to me, I'll forward it on to the body.
I'm adding it in my list.
Thank you.
If we could just pass it around the whole group, I think that would.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. I have a question about these sidewalks. Are all sidewalks in Southport historic with the slate or whatever material that is? Or is is this not historic?
This particular area, I don't believe is historic. The sidewalks are going to be constructed out of concrete here.
Okay, because I'm remembering back, I can't remember when, but the head of DPW was here and he was talking about landscapers parking, doing damage on the historic sidewalks, and I'm not sure if that's been followed up with. We were gonna maybe look at increasing the fines and trying to deter those landscapers somehow. So anyway, this just reminded me of something that was discussed. I'm not sure it was followed through. Looks like David's gonna follow up with me.
Yeah, I'll look at it internally. I'm not sure that we've necessarily done anything adjusting fines, but that's a good point. So I've
I think
added.
it's only
my
$10
notes.
if they park and the damage is much
Yeah,
greater,
but
so.
I'm, yeah, very
Uh,
familiar with, yeah, it's an issue. You know, cars, not just landscapers or anybody, but cars just drive right up on them and cracks right away. So
Right, I
this,
remember that.
this is focused more, outside of the
Yeah,
village on
yeah.
connectivity, but the bulk of the village does have slate and there's a major initiative that's been going on for, you know, a few years to get going to, you know, they're actively, and you're right, if they drive right up on them and they break it.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
I'll bring
thank-
that up. and get-
Okay, thank
but
you,
yeah,
David, and thank you for your information.
Representative Horton.
Margaret Horton, District 10. Just a quick comment. I just wanted to say I'm really excited to see this project moving along, and thank you for including the traffic calming measures in it. I'm also hopeful that this will help some of the businesses in that area because it's really hard to get to some of those with foot traffic. And so having those better sidewalks, I think, will improve some of the shops along that area for them as well.
Thank you. I agree.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Representative Kuhn.
John Kuhn, District 7. Far be it from me to take advantage of a Civ E here who is also talking about things like sidewalks. And I want to go back to something that I'm curious about, and it isn't directly relevant here, but could be things like plastic paving and alternative technologies for sidewalks and bricks and that sort of thing. Are you aware of any of that stuff? Are you hearing anything about that?
I'm somewhat aware of some of these. I know we're trying to keep up with new technologies as well. Namely, what comes to mind will probably be like permeable pavement, permeable sidewalks, that sort of thing.
Okay, I guess by the time I'm done with like 40 years here, maybe we'll get it done. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none. Oh, wait. Representative Radsky.
I've lost track of where that map went around the room. I just wanted to take a look at it to see if I had an extra question. Yeah, thank.
Before they go away, he wants to look at it.
So I think you mentioned this in answering another member's question, but so this isn't for the heart of the village as such, and that's because of issues potentially relating to historical status. But there is some plan to prepare some of those sidewalks because they are really uneven, especially on West Ray Road.
So the slate sidewalks specifically are currently in the process of being repaired, or well, repaired and, I mean, generally replaced. And so that initiative is ongoing. I am aware, yes, there are also concrete and paved sidewalks in certain sections, Westway being one of them, that in various sections need attention. So that would fall under our normal, sidewalk repair and replacement program. I don't have in front of me the exact timelines on each of them. A lot of those are when we come in to do paving, we then work on doing the sidewalks as well. This specific piece isn't just about simply replacing damaged sidewalks, but there's a connectivity element to it. That was a big part of this initiative. So it goes a little beyond just the swapping out of the actual sidewalks. The biggest issue, particularly in the village, although absolutely, there's tree roots and other things that are causing paved and concrete, but the slate sidewalks in particular, whether it was vehicles or just simply time, we're getting to a point where, you know, people were pushing strollers and they choose to go on the road instead because you literally couldn't get them down some of the sidewalks. They were so damaged. So, you know, in the world of sort of finite allocation of, you know, resources to allocate, I mean, there's certainly, that was a priority.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your work on this.
Representative Garskoff.
Thank you. Mr. Becker, could you define connectivity versus sidewalks briefly?
I think the concept for this one is that it's for the sake of having one continuous pedestrian path throughout the scope here. In that area in question, there are some sidewalks constructed, but they're not completely connected. So the project entails creating some new sidewalks as well as rehabbing some existing sidewalks so that, you know, by the time of the end of the project, there's one continuous path from one end to the other.
Thank you, Representative Rock.
Mr. Becker, Dave Rock, District 2. Is there a way we can find out where the progress is for the Slate Village sidewalks? I know you've mentioned that it's ongoing, it's happening, but how do I find out? Because it's not even my district, but I've got people who are very keen on that issue that have reached out a couple of times, specifically around Trinity Church in Southport. I've actually walked.
Representative Rock, I'm just going to ask, just because it's not related to the Southport, that you ask Mr. Becker that offline. You can ask him separately, just for time's sake.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions regarding this Southport sidewalk connectivity project? Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming to our board. Oh, Representative Shea.
Thanks, Representative Shea, District 2. I just noticed on the bids that there were only 2 bids received for this, and it was a considerable difference between the 2 bids. Again, why aren't we getting at least 3 bids on these major projects? This is almost $1 million worth of work, and I don't understand why we can't have 3 bidders at least for sidewalks.
I just said not for not trying. This is the same issue that we had with, I mean, the alternative would be to then cancel this, start all over again, I mean, and keep trying, right? So we had the same problem with East Trunk too. We have this problem with this too. The master flood is an example too. I mean, the desire is not even just, it's not even it's 3, 4, 5, 6. We'd love to have a robust group. One of the pieces of feedback that we're getting is that contractors are being pickier about what they want to be involved in. They're still very busy. They have more work than they, you know, than they have the ability to actually deliver on. I can't speak for, you know, each contractor and what they choose to or not to, but this is a recurring problem that we're having. At times we've held bids open longer, you know, extended them trying to do that. I can't say if that was specifically on this. I'd have to look back, but on numerous ones we've tried to extend, you know, in the hopes of making sure that we get a wide, you know, variety of, but it is an ongoing problem. We don't anticipate that to necessarily get better anytime soon. You know, maybe at some point when less pass-through dollars and ARPA and other things, but it's a problem.
Okay, yeah, maybe the purchasing department can hire a consultant or something to see if there's other ways to encourage more participation with public bids.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the body regarding the Southport consent? Seeing none, thank you. Thank you for coming to the board meeting. Appreciate it. Finally, Mr. Papa George, I'm going to ask you to come on up. We're going to move on to the air conditioning at Tomlinson Middle School, which is agenda item 15. Starting on page 196 of our backup, our general summaries. Tomlinson AC is specified more on 215. And Angeles Papa George, our Director of School Operations, is here.
Good evening, everyone. So as you all know, there's a multi-phase air conditioning project and indoor air quality and air conditioning project for the school system. So this would be our phase 2 of that operation. It's Tomlinson Middle School. You'll see in our printed backup, it calls for $5,531,690. But in the resolution, there's an $83,000 increase in that. It's because we were able to get out to the design documents and be ready to go out to bid, and that's where the increase amount came from. So we're very comfortable moving forwards with this amount now.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the air conditioning at Tomlinson Middle School? You? Representative Woke.
Jay Woke, District 5. How are you doing? I guess I'll be seeing you at the Sacred Heart games, hockey games. Anyway, my kids went to Tomlinson School, and I can say that it's definitely needed. So I just want to say thank you. They went through, part of it air conditioned, I think.
Yes, this is to complete the project, so it would be 100% air conditioned after this.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Kuhn.
John Kuhn, District 7. Sort of a macro question, air conditioning, heating, HVAC stuff. I know there's a whole lot of stuff moving about with all these pieces. Have we, and I know we've talked about it briefly in the past, and I'm feeling like my committee should be more coordinated with you guys and Sustainable Fairfield and all that, but have we looked into things like geothermal and that sort of thing? I realize that's probably a bigger nut, but I know that First Selectman Gerber and I have talked in the past, maybe before he was elected, maybe he's changed his mind now. But looking at it as a long-term investment, that the cost of operation may be cheaper to do those kinds of things, or does it just not make sense because it has to be a piecemeal approach? I don't know.
So for a project like Tomlinson, it doesn't make a lot of sense because, as you said, it is piecemeal. Most of the building is already air conditioned. We're adding to an already existing structure that already has some air conditioning. And as you also mentioned, their upfront costs are higher and the operation costs may seem lower to operate, but at the same time, the capacity of the district to maintain such equipment that we don't have the knowledge or experience to, we'd end up costing to outsource the repairs, preventative maintenance, and such forth.
Okay, I guess I'm using this as my reason to get myself more involved with what you're doing so that we can be at an earlier stage in the process, because I realize you guys have stuff that you need to do and are doing. And it's hard for me to come in after the fact and second guess. I don't want to be doing that.
And I would encourage you
Representative, yeah, I'd encourage you to reach offline to.
We'll do it offline.
Thank you. Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Josh Garskoff, District 5. A follow-up to Representative Kuhn's question. What about air-to-air heat pumps? Is that something you would consider in this situation? And would there be rebates and such available to the town for that might make it cheaper than air conditioning on its own?
So we always look at all options to see what's out there, what's available, and what costs are available, and what rebates are available. I would encourage both of you, if you're interested, to attend the building committee meetings, because they are the ones who set forth the plan and move forwards with it.
But that would be something that would be on the table as a possibility if the numbers looked right?
Everything's on the possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Steele.
Thank you, Jeff Steele, District 3. what is the plan for the additional schools? I guess there were 6 that haven't been addressed, and this is one of them. So the others, Jennings, Dwight, Fairfield Ward, Ludlow, and Walter Fitzgerald. Is that phase 3, the rest of them? And
That's phase 3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5. Are they each around this dollar figure, 5 million or so? Is that the plan or what?
They are not. I apologize. I do not have our waterfall in front of me right now, but they are updated on our capital waterfall plan for each school and each site.
And I see it says that the alternative to this request would be to postpone the project, continue to carry it in the Board of Ed's waterfall. What does that mean in practical terms if that happens, Board of Ed waterfall versus this?
So we would have to relook at the waterfall and the cash flow for the town to figure out where we would be able to fit a project like this back into it. And I'm being told that the waterfall is in the backup for that you guys received as well. So you should have the additional schools and the costs associated with them.
Yeah, I mean, there's 365 pages in the backup. I probably missed that one. Yeah. And then has this gone out to bid yet? And if so, how many responses have you received?
Contracts have not gone out to bid yet. This is to prepare the money so that we can go out to bid.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding the Tomlinson air conditioning? All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is the Naps Highway Tennis and Basketball Courts, Agenda Item 16, backup page 205. This is also you, Mr. Papa George.
Yes, so this is a project that is ready to go. It has gone out to bid and we did get bid numbers on it. Looking at the resolution, it does mention a $7 million. I just wanted to point out that that is not all inclusive of this project. That is a bunch of smaller capital and non-reoccurring projects that the town had bonded a few years back. So this particular increase is for 409,965 to meet the requirements of the bid that we did receive. And this, we did get small number of bids as well, but we are comfortable with the gentleman, or the company, I should say, who is the lowest bidder. He's done work in town with similar projects before.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this item? No one in the corner? Any questions? Oh, Representative Britton.
Just a quick, Peter Britton, District 1. So I have this right, 7.6 million in total for the basketball court and the tennis court.
No, sorry, I was trying to, it's, the 7 million was what was originally bonded by the town, and this was a small part of that original bond. This is an increase of 409,965. It brings the project up to total 828,318 for the basketball and tennis courts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. If I'm reading this correctly, it looks like the original approved project that it's almost double what it was originally going to be, and I was just curious about that. I mean, I think it probably really needs to be done. The courts are not in good shape. I'm just curious why the bids came in almost double what was originally anticipated.
That is correct. So originally the project was put out for approval of seed money for that, and we were carrying a 418,362 as an estimated cost based on experience with this type of project. Once we were able to receive the bid documents and get ready and go out to bid, we went out to bid, and that's when we learned that the true value of this project was 828,318. We had the 418 as a placeholder in our waterfall, but we were looking for the seed money to firm up that number.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Carroll canceled. Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the partial roof replacements, agenda item 17, backup page 229. Mr. Papa George.
Again, so these are 3 roofs. We don't normally do 3 roofs, but we felt that because 3 partial roofs, let me correct myself. We don't normally do that in a single summer, but we felt that timing wise, it was adequate to be done. The only one that is not on our waterfall that would have been done this year, but it would have been done a year out, was the Tomlinson one. But we felt it important that if we're going to be placing new HVAC equipment on the roof, we replace the roof now rather than trying to lift off brand new equipment in a year from now to replace the roof. So it will coincide with the air conditioning project.
Are there any questions? Representative Garskoff.
Thank you. Mr. Papa George, I think this might predate your involvement, but McKinley was built and then we immediately had to fix the roof. And I'm know that history. Can you walk us through how that relates to this roof replacement?
I'm not familiar with the McKinley one, but I can look into that. This is Tomlinson one is a partial roof replacement for the older sections of the roof.
I know, but there's a McKinley replacement, partial replacement as well, correct?
Correct. So the McKinley one is a partial replacement.
And I think there was curbing that was improperly installed when the building was built, and there was a roofing. It wasn't a full roof replacement, but there was significant roof. We had to redo a lot of that roof right after it was built. So I just was curious how this relates to that.
I would have to get the history on that. I apologize. I don't know the history of that particular project and the problem that happened. But this is going to be a typical 20-25 year roof replacement with warranty.
That building is that old?
Let me look.
We have members saying that it's about 21 years old.
Wow. Wow.
Representative Garskoff just stated his time on it.
Wow.
Any other questions regarding the roof replacements?
It's 2003 to be exact.
Great. Representative Bremen.
Thank you. Lenny Brayman, District 8. Mr. Papa George, are there efficiencies to be gained from doing 3 roof replacement projects at once from an economic perspective? You mentioned not having to go back and remove or move existing new HVAC equipment on Tomlinson. Are there other efficiencies that we can gain?
In the bidding process, we would hope that if a single contractor was to be awarded all 3 bids, it would be a single mobilization. So there's savings in that. And there could be some also savings in purchasing in bulk for three projects. There's one at a time.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding this item? I just want to say that we're lucky enough to be adding 3 agenda items next week to this agenda. So we will have items 25, 26, and 27, all regarding the roof, just to form building committees for the roof. So it'll be easy, but those have to wait until the Board of Selectmen votes on them later this week. Seeing no other questions, we'll move on to the school district building evaluation, agenda item 18. I'm going to call up Mr. Gerber for selectman. Mr. Papa George can stay on deck and Mr. Becker can come back. This starts on page 268 of our backup.
Good evening. Thanks for inviting me up. So we were asked by the Board of Ed to approve seed money to explore the option of building a new school on the current Dwight campus, but up on the field that would include a new ECC. I believe it was 65,000 square feet, or yeah, 63.5, something like that, for a gross cost before reimbursement of 65 million. We also received, and that was a very preliminary estimate that we got from Silver Petroselli, and we also got another another analysis, very, very high level as well, for what it would cost to renovate the existing school with a 9,000 square foot addition to make that school, to give them some additional classrooms and offices that they wanted. That was significantly less. I think it was about 20 million less, maybe, net of reimbursement, maybe closer to 15. When talking with people on the Board of Ed, I think there was a belief that certain properties weren't really available to them long-term, like Mona Terrace, and the Giant Steps property. We have a building there. Given the high cost of building a new building with an ECC, and the high cost of adding the ECC versus the existing footprint, which up on the hill, which didn't include a real assessment of what the septic system renovations would cost, hadn't really considered what would happen with the playing fields and how viable it would be to develop a new playing field on the existing site. I think, this stuff wasn't worked through, but would likely demolish the existing building if we built the new building and put in a playing field there. But we do have other properties. So the other thing that really struck us was the potential risk of building a new building on that site up on the hill. We don't really fully understand. We haven't characterized what is underneath the ground there. So if it's ledge and there's going to be a lot of drilling and blasting and things like that, the price would probably be higher than anticipated. So we've never really done something like this before in Fairfield. Either a total renovate is new for the Dwight School or a new building. A renovate is new for the Dwight School would be a substantial project, and there would be logistics around where the kids would go. The new building, that magnitude of investment, we haven't really ever seen anything like that before. And we felt that the wise thing to do was to step back a little bit and do some more due diligence on the various properties, including doing borings and some schematics on the site on the field up on the upper field, but also some borings on the 9,000 square foot addition site in the current next to the current footprint, as well as look at Mona Terrace and see if it would be viable to put in a permanent ECC there. Currently, the plan is to use that site for several years. The initial plan was to do some high level, papering over some of the spots that ultimately were going to have to get remediated, but to get the school district through a 3 to 5 year period. The Giant Steps property, we haven't really characterized all the issues in that abandoned building across from Giant Steps, but it is a very nice, the footprint there, I mean, I think it's worth exploring. So one last point was the 5 classroom ECC that was being proposed on the Dwight Upper Field site. The initial plans put forward included a Jennings ECC as well, 5 classrooms, which would be you would put a second floor on the Jennings, and on the first floor would be the ECC. And we would like to answer questions around that as well, including, I think the main one that, and Jen Jacobson is here tonight, but the main one is the traffic study to make sure that we can actually do that. Because if we can't, if we don't have a natural site for that 5 classroom ECC, we may have to look for a 10 classroom ECC somewhere else. And it might, in our opinion, we need to work through that before we commit to an ECC on the Dwight property that's 5 classrooms. So with all these questions, we wanted to step back and spend some, I guess it's sort of insurance for us to make sure that we're not going forward with a plan that we will regret because we hadn't really characterized the sites and don't really understand what the options are fully. And this there's a lot of emotion here because the Dwight School is old and it should have been renovated a long time ago. And, the students and parents report, a musty smell in the school. So we do have to do something quickly. And the question is what? And we just want to make sure we're doing the right thing.
Thank you. Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Liz Esmond, District 4. Thank you for this. And 2 questions I have. One is that my understanding is a standalone ECC that's not contiguous with a school faces some challenges in terms of, the shared services that they would want to have within a school building. I don't know if that's something you need to think more about or if I may be mistaken.
Well, I know that the Board of Ed, if all things being equal, they would prefer to have an ECC attached to a school. But the idea would be to build something that would be, perfectly suitable for that purpose. So, I mean, you can ask Ms. Jacobson or other people on the Board of Ed just how much that is worth in dollars. I think to us, we want to know what the options are because if it's, and I've said that if it's $1 million difference, it's one thing. If it's a $30 million difference, it's another. And we just feel that it would be irresponsible not to better characterize what it is that we're going to be spending for what we're getting. And if for certain things, you can't put a price tag on it, we understand that. But we haven't seen the analysis that would allow us to even start to really understand what it is that we'd be asking the Board of Ed to give up, if anything.
Thank you. We do have Jen Jacobson here. I do want members to know that. So Jen, if you do want to come up and answer any of the questions so far, she's a member of the Board of Education and she is here. So if anyone has anything. Yep. So if your questions answered that way, Representative Zezima.
Yeah, my other one, I may speak to Jen offline or maybe she can answer here. And that is that you really can't do a vertical add-on for ECC because of rules that don't allow children under a certain age to be on a second floor, which you can flip that, but.
That is true. And I think the idea would be to put the ECC on the first floor and move the kids to the second. The other thing I just want to add is, we may very well end up with the original plan. I don't think anyone is saying that can't happen, but I think what the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen, or at least myself, are saying that we would not be willing to make that decision until we make sure it's the right decision for the town.
I agree. I support this.
Thank you, Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. I think this is really important to make sure we're doing our due diligence and not just sort of band-aiding problems. I'm curious if doing this feasibility study, would it all involve working with the state delegation around just how I know that the racial imbalancing statute is sort of on pause pending, further study, but I would imagine that that could come back around and impact how these building spaces are used. So and maybe that's a separate from this feasibility study, but just wondering how that all kind of intersects together.
Jen, I'm not speaking for Jen Jacobson, but having observed this from, within my house, from my wife who was on the Board of it, the racial imbalance, would probably, there are probably arguments you could make that any building anywhere could impact the ability to redistrict kids. Or send kids to different schools or you know, or even have an ECC or a CLC or something like that that might help with racial balance. So I'm sure there are certainly connections there, but or there could be. I don't know, but I don't think anyone knows exactly what they're going to be.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you. Kristen O'Neill, District 5. I just want to say, first of all, I'm really glad to see this because I agree 100% with what Representative Horton just said, that it's important to, there's a lot of moving pieces to this project, and to understand some of that, just the background before we start building. And the other question I had is, would it be possible to send out some type of survey to families in Fairfield with young preschool, toddler age children, just to see, you know, what they're looking for in a preschool program now that the kindergarten start date has shifted, and also now that we've added full day programming to the ECC? Just to know what people want.
Ms. Jacobson, do you want to come up and answer that question?
I think they have done some survey. Yeah, and the answer is that the Board of Ed has done surveys. Yeah, and you're aware this thing's tripled in size in a very short period of time. So yeah.
Thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. For Selectman Gerber, what did you mean by the original plan? When you were talking about the original plan before?
I forget in what context.
Like for the ECC? Was that like
The original plan for the ECC, well, not the, you know, there have been many plans for the ECC over the years. And if you remember back a few years ago, the plan was to try to figure out a way to have one ECC in a central location. But the current thinking of the Board of Ed, because, and I've learned this from Board of Ed member Jen Jacobson, is that kids were sitting on the bus for upwards of like 50 minutes to get to Ward from the far reaches of like Greenfield Hill. So I think that the thinking has changed. I can't believe I'm speaking for the Board of Ed here, but stop me if I do anything wrong.
Jen,
so,
Jen, you feel free to come on up and
Yeah.
give us a little bit so that we can get it from the source.
Hi, good evening, Jen Jacobson. Happy to answer any questions. I don't know what you want me to speak to, but yes, so ECC has been an issue and a growing issue for a very long time. Looking to build dedicated space for our preschool programs. It's been across 6 different schools since the early 2000s, including McKinley and Burr and Dwight and everywhere else where we've had pre-K programming. So now that the state passed reimbursement, they are incentivizing adding I'm not going to call it ECC, but early childhood programming space to elementary schools with a 15% increase on your reimbursement rate that you would normally get. So this would provide also additional reimbursement rate for us in order to do it that way. So that's one of the considerations. I don't know what's, oh yeah, so we want to, right now, as you know, we have Summit Ward and we have Stratfield. So we do have from the west, we don't really have any programming on, we don't have any preschool programming on the west side. So we do have an excessive issue on transportation for our preschoolers coming from the west side of town. 172 hours a year one way, double that on the return. So versus other sides of town who have maybe 12 hours a year just to get there. So there's a mass discrepancy in that, not helped at all by the busing shortage that we have currently as well. Even if we wanted to get more buses, we can't get them. We're already in a shortage. So I know Mr. Gerber said, well, you know, 10 somewhere. I could tell you that would not be attractive to me anyway. I mean, obviously we'll be willing to talk about anything, but the point is to spread it out. The point is to have 3 different sites so that students are not sitting on those buses for such an excessive amount of time. So that's kind of the thinking around the 3 different sites at this point. And we do see the value at this point of always keeping Ward, even if it ever became for itinerant services. It's just a good facility the town did put money into, and see the value in keeping that as well at this point. So
Great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear this. And I do agree about spreading it out because of transportation issues. The only thing that I wanted to mention as an advocate for the Jennings neighborhood is that if we were to go up on Jennings, I definitely agree with including the traffic study because the addition of Woods, I live right off Burroughs Road, and the addition, the expansion of Woods back in 2012, whatever, around that time, had a huge impact on the neighborhood for traffic.
I do want to take a moment to clarify, Mr. Gerbers, he said we'd be putting a second floor on Jennings. Just to be clear, that's not the plan in terms of like the whole building. It would be to do an addition for the ECC piece and then just above that where we would relocate. So it's not the whole.
Right.
So,
No, but
I
it's,
just want to make sure no one thought we were doing a total at this point in terms of that estimate. And the traffic study is in this $1 million. In the backup. I know that the motion is a little bit confusing because it says school district evaluation, but it's not. There's some schools that are being looked at with this $1 million, but just so everyone here is clear, they're also looking at like what's happening with the health department, what's going to happen with the senior center. Like Mr. Gerber mentioned, the Barberry, that's not a school property. Mona Terrace, that's not a school property. So even though your motion says school building evaluation, it's not limited to that. So I just want to make sure everyone knows that there's other facilities being looked at as well for this. So,
yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add that the traffic is a really important consideration, especially where we've already expanded.
I think with this $1 million, it's just the traffic study specifically that's being done at Jennings with the $1 million. It's pretty limited in scope. It's not a lot of money, by the way. And then just for the renovation piece for Dwight, I know Mr. Gerber spoke to some of the concerns that they have on that, but we had a couple meetings with Silver Petroselli, and the risk on the renovate like new is also a great unknown in terms of what would happen with the renovate as new at the Dwight facility once people actually got into that building. So the higher risk is associated with the renovate as new at this point.
Thank you, Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. I just want to add to my colleague saying that we're really excited that you're doing more of a holistic study to get a sense of where the best options are and looking for both the racial imbalance question and understanding where there are population densities and gaps will be really interesting when looking at where the ECC will go and just data on the renovation.
I don't think that's a part of this funding though. I'll let Mr. Gerber, it's his project, speak to it, but they're not doing any racial imbalance work with this money.
Well, seeing as it's it's an opportunity to take a holistic look in making decisions in this way, it would be useful to take the opportunity to address a lot of the challenges that we are seeing with the schools in terms of population, racial imbalance, districting, all of that. So just saying, it would be really nice to have that be a part of the planning process when you're investing a lot of money in building either a new school or additions to address that.
I mean, we can try to incorporate it, but you know, the Board of Ed, after how many years, has never figured this out, and I can't promise that we'll be able to figure it out, but we can try to factor it in. I mean, we're not even really sure where that's going right now.
Thank you, Representative Wolk.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Wolk, District 5. First of all, I know you guys know I've been an advocate for maintenance on the schools since I've come on the RTM. So I want to thank you for this. I'm in favor of everything that you're doing to our schools. It's definitely needed. But I did want to say on that note, Jen, I just want to thank you very much for everything that you do for our kids and my kids and everybody's kids.
Jay, I'm just going to ask that we stay on topic, okay?
Okay, no
We're
problem.
a long agenda. Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representatives, anyone else who hasn't asked a question? Representative Zezima does have another question. Go ahead, Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Liz Esma, District 4. Forgot to ask, and I think the answer is no, but because this is broader in scope than just Dwight, this does not affect the seed money, correct?
Well, the seed money is not going to be approved until a site has, I mean, the seed money to investigate a single site, we have to figure out which single site, we're gonna go.
But this money doesn't say come out of that, in other words.
This money, well, there's probably some overlap, but, so if, we do, soil, testing, yeah, the schematics and soil testing on the upper field, or on the next to the existing site, the work that we would do, that whoever wins the bid will do on the existing site. Jen Jacobson just mentioned there are risks, with renovating a school. Hopefully, the work that will get done will identify most of those risks. So it's all going to be, regardless of, hopefully, I mean, the whole idea of this is to get a better understanding of whatever site, whatever plan we end up recommending, or the Board of Ed. Actually, we won't recommend a plan, but we'll be part of providing the information. Hopefully that will make the seed money required for the full design, a little bit less, but that's the idea.
Great, thank you.
Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Bill, I guess my question would be, we're looking at initial costs of $1 million for an evaluation. Does the town have any expertise internally that it could use to perform some aspects of this evaluation?
We do have a lot of expertise that will be involved, but this really, I think we believe it really needs to be, bid out to a third-party expert. We have project managers who've worked on schools. We've got engineers who've worked on schools. They're all going to be involved in evaluating this. They're involved in developing an RFP together with the Board of Ed. But I don't think, we're not really looking to do the test work. I mean, I think most of this stuff usually has to be done by third parties.
So is that what the majority of the expense is, testing?
There's schematics, there's borings, there's, looking behind walls and ceilings, and there's, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to see if, when we look at the Giant Steps property, they're going to have to determine whether the bones of that building are good or not. If they are, I mean, it's a big concrete structure. I mean, it could be pretty valuable if the steel, beams are still in good shape. It could be a pretty valuable building. And we need to determine whether or not it needs to be bulldozed or whether we can renovate it. It's hard to tell right now.
Thanks.
Might be helpful just to clarify a little bit about exactly what this money is being spent on, and then also what the deliverables are. But when we talked about it at Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, we're talking structural engineers. We're talking HVAC professionals who need to go into Oldfield. What will it cost to put HVAC into Oldfield? It doesn't have any HVAC. We're talking civil engineers for the septic systems at Dwight. Where can it be moved? What would happen to so there are hazmat testing, indoor air quality tests, things like that. So we're talking a lot of professionals in order to assess any of these facilities for feasibility and what they actually would cost to renovate them or rebuild them or at whatnot. So it's a lot of technical expertise that is needed.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
I'm going to be the least liked RTM member tonight, and I apologize in advance. Michelle McCabe, District 4. So I'm going to just try to be brief. Again, we're looking at the POCD. It's racial imbalance is a housing issue. And I don't know the timing of this study, but if there's a way to coordinate the timing of this study with, advocacy around making some changes in the Dwight area that would allow for smaller lot sizes, that would allow for people to be able, of all incomes, to be able to afford to live near this new facility that we're expanding or whatever it might be. I just think it's critical. Like, this is a very expensive undertaking, and this is our opportunity to really be holistic in how we're doing this. And I know that there are advocates in the community that are saying this, and I'm quoting them. So this is just coming from me.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding this item? Seeing none, thank you, everybody. We're gonna move on to the complete and, oh, thank you, Mr. Papa George, for staying so long. I think you're set too, Ms. Jacobson. Thank you.
Thank
gonna-
you for your work as chair, Jen.
Yes, and thank you, Jen Jacobson, for her work as chair this past year. We're going to move on to our complete and safe streets project, agenda item 19, page 276 of our backup. We got Mr. Becker back up again. I don't know if Mr. Gerber wants to stay up there or not.
Yeah, so we have a number, we are, and we'll be presenting next week on Complete Streets. But that we have a number of projects that we would like to get done as part of that effort. And we have gone out to talk to consultants. We know, you know, what the steps are. You need to do surveys of streets before you know what you can even do. Where the right of way actually is for the town. It's not clear on some streets. And what is possible to put in terms of traffic calming on the streets. And so we have identified three, there are many areas, but three initial areas are, we have South Benson Road, Mill Plain Road, Reading, and Sturgis that we have gotten quotes on for doing surveys and likely design work. You know, or a quote for design work on Reading Road. We don't have the money to this is like seed money to allow us to do the survey and design work on those streets. Plus, we have other streets like Villa Avenue. We are going to be, you know, I'm sure people have heard we've had issues on Burroughs and Fairfield Woods Road. There's so many different roads, but we need to get started with design, with surveys and designs. So this is seed for that.
Thank you. Did you want to say, and I realize we also have Mr. Hurley on the phone as well, or on WebEx. So, but go ahead, Mr. Becker.
So on this end, we also have a state bond for $1 million, for instance, on Reading Road that was recently approved by the State Bonding Commission. And as an example, that's a construction-based item. So we can't even tap into that unless we do the surveying and the design work. And I usually say, you know, it almost not a day goes by that in town hall that we're not doing something related to complete streets. Everything we look at, from connectivity to sidewalks, paving, whether they're gonna pave a road or do sidewalks on a road, whether or not while we're there, we could do more things at that area, how everything connects, and same working with the police department and their traffic safety, you know, division and add to that, you know, just the sheer number of issues we're having and the frequency in town from a safety perspective, where improvements in connectivity and sidewalks, but also traffic calming measures and whatnot. So, so one big thing that we realized once we hit, you know, we've been doing a lot of internal items. We've tried to have, you know, the engineering department has done, you know, conceptual work on the South Benson and some other areas. We're trying to work as close as we can without necessarily having to, you know, that next step of having to expend serious dollars. Reading Road and the bond from the state was sort of a wake up because we've been talking about it. We've been getting closer. We've been doing what we can internally, but we can't actually take those next steps without real funding. So the complete streets, and next week you'll get an update, you know, on the ordinance and the plan and where we're at. But this is sort of the first foray, you know, funding wise in the town specifically towards the initiative. So it'll be largely designed, but it will lead to the construction projects and trying to be as synergistic as we can within those. And I did want to bring up in our current capital plan, that there's an allocation. It's actually a larger amount spread over several years, that did call for doing this. So it does fit. It accelerates a little bit up into this current year, to be bonded, but it does generally fit with what our plan has been.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the Safe Streets project? Representative Shea.
Thank you very much for all your work on this. Question, what criteria did you use to determine the first streets where you were going to have the surveying work done? Because there's so many of them. I just wonder how you came up with the first few.
Chris, I wish I had a better answer for you than one of them. We had 2 deaths. I mean, it's not as scientific as it will be as we get further along in this process. It really is initial crash data, and the fear of the residents, the people who are calling in and saying they're trying to walk their kids to school and their kid almost got run over. Many emails, but that is really not where we ultimately want to be by the end of at some point during this year. We're going to create a more data-driven, scientific approach to it, because there are so many complaints, so many issues all over town. We're going to have to prioritize them. So I wish I had a better answer than that, but we do know that these areas are low-hanging fruit. We do know there's been a lot of issues there, and there have been issues elsewhere as well. So.
And I can add, South Benson as an example, it initiated with neighborhood, crashes and complaints about speeding, people going through stop signs. It started with a discussion about just doing speed tables and maybe even using ARPA to do that back in the spring. That caused us to take a much deeper look at what was going there. Some of those issues are actually occurring, but it also was a volume issue, both in vehicles, pedestrians, bicyclists. And in the middle of looking through that area, we actually were looking throughout the entire town as to areas where we could do numerous complete streets, traffic calming and pedestrian measures. So almost, I caution using the word pilot program, but I'd pilot, but we're going to do them, and then you're going to get a place to see it. But one of the ideas, almost more of a showcasing of them. South Benson actually, while it was being discussed for those other reasons, turned out to be a roughly mile-long stretch that would allow us to actually do, easily a dozen of those different elements. When you make the turn, here we can put this. When you start, you can put something here. Okay, now that's 2 elements. Okay, now we do raised crosswalk, potentially that's another element. So when you start to add up all the different things, it actually was an area that we could meet an objective and we could get a lot of things done. And it gets us to a point where when we go to pull only, say, 3 of those elements for somebody else's road, we can point to that and we can show that that's something, and we believe in an area that'd be very, very front-facing and very much also a candidate for these items. Same if you're going to try to add sidewalks and some of these other elements. One of the concerns is in a number of areas that we even started to look at, to try to achieve that with rights of way and encroachment and moving, walkways and mailboxes and all the other things, we could be bogged down for years. We believe that we will have some of those things to do in that area, but it won't be as extensive. It's just, again, it's much more just flat out doable. And that's a key criteria in the early stages of trying to get something down that also has an impact. That you can then demonstrate and move forward with.
I'd like to add one.
If the board doesn't mind, I just want to chime in as a reminder.
Bill Hurley is online. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. you'll be hearing, later, this week at the Board of Selectmen, and eventually it will come to the RTM. The town has been awarded the Safe Routes for All grant. And so it has to go through all the boards. And this will be a grant that enables the town, as Bill had mentioned, to analyze crash data and give, there'll be speed data, there'll be priorities. And so that's part of the whole master plan of the complete streets, the whole Vision Zero concept and all that. So you'll be hearing much more about that in the next couple of weeks for sure.
One additional item, answer Chris's question for Mill Plain. So we, in the Complete Streets ordinance, we stated when we are looking to pave, when a road comes up on the paving schedule, that is the optimal time to look at Complete Streets improvements, and Mill Plain was up for paving. We actually, interestingly enough, it really is interesting the way this effort has really, and Bill, Bill, you can back me up. I think that it's permeated almost the whole town hall. Like everyone's kind of talking about this now. It's our DPW head is reading books on Complete Streets. It's really interesting how we're all thinking about it now, but some time ago, Mill Plain was actually put on the paving schedule, and I got an email from the head of the chair of the Bike Ped Committee. He says, "Why is Mill Plain on the Mill Plain's on the paving schedule, but weren't you guys going to look at it?" And we all said, "Oh yeah, it should not be on the paving schedule." So that's been delayed until we do this assessment. But we're getting there. I'll talk about it next week. Bill has black hats to work with, the boxes that you put up to measure speed. They have additional ones now. We have this grant. We have a person within DPW that builds this in-house. He's building he's managing the construction. Mega Jane designed the roundabout. He's actually building it. So, and I think, we are going to get there. So it's pretty torturous though. And it's a long-term, it really is a long-term project.
Any more questions regarding the Safe Streets project? Representative Kuhn.
Representative Kuhn, District 7. In these studies or in how you're looking at this stuff, are you taking into account unintended consequences? So for example, South Benson, you put some things on South Benson. Does that then flow into people going down other streets to get to the same thing and causing some of the original problems on South Benson now on a different road?
So that was the reason we put a halt on the speed table idea. We originally were going to acquire rubber temporary speed tables and do a demonstration project from one end of South Benson to the end to try to slow people down. And we got concerned that people would then take one of the other streets. So there may be unintended consequences if and you have to model that. If you really, the idea is not to make it, so one street you can go 50 and the other street you have to go 20.
Thank you. Any other questions? Great, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 20, Mr. Becker, revenue surplus. I don't think it's in our backup, it's just in the agenda.
So this is just it's an annual item. So they're in the process, the auditor in settling up our final numbers for the year. The expense side, surplus, portion of it goes into fund balance, and the rest, if there is any, can go into our debt service account. The Board of Finance handles that as a transfer. However, additional revenues, we don't actually have authorization to spend that in the future, even inside of any sort of an account that it gets transferred into, without all three bodies, as with any appropriation above the budgeted amount. So this item is to approve the potential future spending, and the place that the town has historically in recent years placed it is into the debt service fund. It can be moved out of the debt service fund at direction of the Board of Finance for other expenditures. It has, for instance, this year's budget approved by all the boards. A small portion of it was used to mitigate debt service costs. But this is really one of the only, if not the only place that we can go, other than going simply to fund balance. And once it goes into the fund balance, you basically we don't ever take it out. So we are at all of our targets per our policies and with the ratings agencies on fund balance. This is where, again, this is where it's gone in recent years. So.
Great, are there any questions regarding revenue surplus? Representative Havey.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Lisa Havey, District 9. I did see in the backup somewhere that there was a sale of assets that was part of the surplus for $103, I believe. I'm just really curious as to what the town could possibly sell for $103.
So that's in thousands. So it's 103,000. There's been a little bit of, we did some sort of finance accounting speak in our wording, and everything was done with the assumption that everybody would just pick up on that it really means thousands, because that's how it's done in our financials. There is the thousands above it that was added by the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and next year we'll probably just add the thousands. It's not. Yeah, so it's 103,000. And that's usually, their surplus, anything that the town is, disposed of that has any amount of value does, go out on auction sites and get sold. So cars, things like that, so.
Thank you. My colleague just pointed out the small print, so I missed that. I think I was just so like.
All good. It is late.
Thank you.
Worry. So.
Yes. Any other questions regarding this item? Seeing none, I'm going to announce, thank you, Mr. Becker and Mr. Gerber. I'm going to announce that we're going to hold off on the 3 ordinances till next week, just because it's a late hour. So we're going to hold off, and we still have to meet in our committees. I just want to remind everyone that next week is the organizational meeting. I'd love for everyone to look at those dates that are suggested to vote on. Put them in your calendars, make sure there's no holidays, make sure there's no conflicts, and so that your attendance will be all here next year. A motion to adjourn, or a quick question, Representative Carson? No, this contract is voting yes. Yeah. Okay. We're going to all break off into our respective committees. For those online, please see the bottom of the warning for the number to call into for your representative committees. Chairs, please remember to record the meeting. Thank you all, and see you next week. Thank you.